Hollywood's famous couple suddenly stopped collaborating in 1939, and no one understood why. After making 10 big hit movies, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers decided to leave while they were really popular. New and surprising information has come out about what truly happened. Jealous partners, unfair wages, and a damaging name that hurt box office sales changed everything. This is the story that hasn't been shared before, about why these famous dancers chose not to work together again. Fred Astaire was born on May 10, 1899, in Omaha, Nebraska. His real name was Frederick Austerlitz, but he later made it shorter for his career in show business. Omaha was a small and calm city, away from the flash of Hollywood. Fred's family lived in a simple house, and he didn't start dancing until later in life. Actually, Fred originally didn't enjoy dancing. His older sister, Adele, was the one who was interested in performance. Fred began dancing by chance. When he was 4 years old, he put on dancing slippers in Adele's class and started imitating what he saw. Everyone noticed he was a natural, and that small moment became the start of his amazing success. Fred was 6 and Adele was 8 when they began acting together in vaudeville. Vaudeville was a form of live theater that included singing, dancing, and comedy. Their first show had a weird name: young artists performing an exciting musical dance with their toes. At one point, Fred wore a small top hat and seemed like a little grown-up. In another instance, he dressed up in a lobster outfit to make people laugh. It was a hard way to earn a living. They played in small theaters where the audiences could be tough. They received great reviews, and newspapers said they were the best kid performers in vaudeville. But their victory was not as exciting as it looked. Their family had to keep moving to stay away from breaking child labor rules. Fred's mother was strict and made sure he did well in school, while also doing his performances. By the time Fred was 14, he had gone to more than 25 schools, not staying long enough to make friends. The siblings traveled around the country, living in small, messy rooms with other performers and sometimes animals from different shows. Fred got sick a lot, and one time when he had pneumonia during a tough winter in Chicago, his boss didn't want to give him time off to recover. Fred was only given time to heal after Adele threatened to quit. In 1917, Fred and Adele first appeared on Broadway in a show named Over the Top. The show aimed to raise spirits during World War I, but it faced issues right from the beginning. Right before opening night, the main character got sick, so Fred had to take on a speaking part. He was so nervous that he got sick before every show for weeks. While Adele was performing, her outfit caught fire, but Fred quickly put it out. Adele was okay, but it was a frightening moment. Even with the difficulties, Fred and Adele's dancing received excellent feedback, and people started to recognize Fred's ability. Meanwhile, Ginger Rogers was born as Virginia Catherine McMath on July 16, 1911, in Independence, Missouri. Her birth was very dramatic. Her mother, Layla, chose to have the baby far from her husband, William, because she was afraid. She had lost a baby before due to problems during childbirth and didn't want to go through that again. Layla went from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, to her parents' house in Missouri to be there for Ginger's safe birth. Ginger's parents had a hard time in their marriage. Her father, William, often got angry and drank too much, leading to a lot of issues. Things got worse after Ginger was born. When she was only 7 weeks old, William took her during a fight. He vanished with her for 5 days, causing everyone to worry. The police were called, and they even asked a psychic for help. Fortunately, William brought Ginger back. Later that year, he took her again. This time, her grandpa intervened and made William give her back. After everything, Layla got a divorce and won full custody of Ginger when she was only 15 months old. Her father could no longer visit her. After the split, Ginger went to live with her grandparents in Kansas City, Missouri. Her mom was focused on her entertainment job, so she traveled often. Living with her grandparents was more peaceful. Her grandpa, Walter, was a streetcar conductor. Ginger's grandma, Sophrona, loved to share stories and showed Ginger how to enjoy books. When Ginger was 14 years old, she joined a Charleston dance event in Fort Worth, Texas in 1925. It was a large competition with more than 200 dancers, many of whom were older and had more experience. Ginger wowed everyone with her creative moves, especially a bold backbend that got the crowd cheering. She got the first prize of $100 and the opportunity to perform on the vaudeville circuit for 4 weeks. This was her big opportunity. She became famous as the Charleston champion of Texas and began to tour. Her success led to her picture being in the papers. When a Broadway scout discovered her, her mom chose not to send her to New York right away. Ginger appeared with a group called Ginger Rogers and the Redheads on the vaudeville circuit. They went without stopping and did up to 5 shows each day. It was hard with long train rides, little sleep, and a lot of stress. But Ginger stood out. Once, during a performance, one of her friends injured her ankle. Ginger quickly changed the plan to save the show, and people praised her for being so quick-witted. Eventually, the group split up and Ginger began playing solo. This made her stronger and helped her grow into a more rounded performer. In 1929, Ginger performed on Broadway for the first time in a show named Top Speed. She was just 18 years old and had recently come to New York just before the Great Depression started. She worked hard to get acting jobs, and while practicing for a small role in the show, she impressed the directors so much that they made her the lead. The show was very popular. Ginger received excellent feedback. During this time, she quietly married another performer named Jack Pepper. The marriage ended, but her work became very successful. At 19, Ginger performed in the Gershwin show Girl Crazy in 1930, and it made a big difference in her life. Ginger wasn't meant to be the main actor, but when the lead got sick, she stepped in. Even though she had very little time to get ready, she impressed everyone. Her singing of songs like Embraceable You and But Not For Me made the crowd adore her. The show was very successful and lasted a long time. Hollywood scouts found her, and she quickly started making movies. In 1930, Ginger made her first movie, Young Man of Manhattan. She had a tiny role, but she was noticeable. One of her phrases, "Cigarette me, big boy," became very famous. The movie did well, and Ginger signed a deal with Paramount Pictures. This was the beginning of her road to becoming one of Hollywood's most loved stars. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers first met in 1930 when they were both working on a Broadway show called Girl Crazy. Fred was already well known by the age of 30. Ginger was only 19 and new to performing. Fred was brought in to improve the dance because the show's director was not doing well. During practice, Fred danced with Ginger, taking the place of her partner for a short time. This was their first dance together, but Ginger didn't think he was special at all. She later wrote that she thought of him as just some guy helping out with the dancing. Even though they didn't get along at first, they went on one date in New York. It didn't result in anything important. After the show, they each went their separate ways. Fred continued to dance with his sister Adele on stage, while Ginger went to Hollywood to begin her acting career. Their big meeting took place in 1933 in the movie Flying Down to Rio. This time, they played minor roles instead of the main roles. Fred didn't like being paired with Ginger. He wrote to his lawyer, saying he didn't want to be teamed up with anyone, especially not her. He had danced with his sister for years and wanted to show that he could shine on his own. The studio decided to move forward, and Fred and Ginger shot their first major dance scene, called Karaoke. Although Fred and Ginger weren't the main players, they really stood out and took all the attention. Their dancing was so impressive that the last scene of the movie highlighted them instead of the main stars. Audiences enjoyed the film, and it was very successful, making more than $1.5 million. This success was very important for the company. RKO was having money problems, and this movie, along with King Kong, helped keep the company from going broke. This movie was only the start for Fred and Ginger, who would become one of Hollywood's best pairs. Their next project together was the movie The Gay Divorce in 1934. At first, Fred didn't want to join a dance team again. He even told his agent, "I don't mind making another picture with her." But this team idea is no longer being used. But the studio pushed for it. People enjoyed watching Fred and Ginger in their earlier movie. He agreed to come down to Rio. It ended up being the best choice. The Gay Divorcee was very successful, earning over $1 million in the US and Canada. The movie included a well-known song called The Continental. It ran 17.5 minutes, making it the longest dance scene in a movie at that time. The song won the first Oscar for Best Original Song and topped the charts for weeks. Fred and Ginger didn't just dance well. They revised the process of creating shows. Fred and director Hermes Pan made dances that told stories. Unlike other shows at that time that relied on flashy special effects, Fred preferred to keep the camera focused mainly on the dancers. He wanted to film full-body shots so the viewers could see each step, from beginning to end. This style became their signature. Fred and Ginger had great energy when they acted together. Fred added style, while Ginger brought friendliness and likability. People enjoyed seeing them together. Actress Katharine Hepburn once said that he provides her with class, and she gives him sex appeal. Their best movies were released one after the other. Top Hat was released in 1935, and Swing Time in 1936. Top Hat was their biggest hit and one of the most popular movies of the year. It included the well-known cheek-to-cheek dance, but recording it was challenging. Ginger's feather-covered dress began to lose feathers while she was dancing. Fred was so irritated that he said it looked like a chicken being chased by a coyote. The scene became famous. Swing Time was seen as their most creative film. The Never Gonna Dance routine took 47 tries to perfect. In the end, Ginger's feet were hurting and bleeding, but the outcome was amazing. Critics say it's one of the best dances ever recorded on film. Fred and Ginger were famous performers during the Great Depression. People enjoyed losing themselves in the glamour and beauty of their movies. In 1936, they were some of the biggest stars at the box office in Hollywood. Although they made dancing on TV seem easy, it was very challenging for them. They had to practice for many hours every day. Rehearsals sometimes lasted up to 15 hours, 6 days a week. For the movie Top Hat, made in 1935, the cast and crew rehearsed for an amazing 97 days before they started shooting. Left them tired and hurting. Rogers even said, "I was black and blue from head to foot for weeks." Her job was tougher because she danced every step backwards while wearing high heels. Her legs got puffy, her feet had blisters, and her muscles were sore. To feel better, she soaked her feet in ice water and witch hazel every night, always wishing for everything to be perfect. Made them do dozens of takes until everything was just right. In the 1939 film The Story of Vernon and Irene Castle, they had to practice one dance number 67 times until Astaire was satisfied with it. Their work harmed not only their bodies, it made them anxious as well. Rogers was unable to sleep and felt worried while shooting. Astaire appeared cool on screen, but he often felt insecure. While shooting Shall We Dance in 1937, he had a breakdown and said, "I can't do it anymore. I can't find it." Despite the challenges they faced, they kept going and made shows that people still enjoy today. A difficult moment occurred during Swing Time in 1936. The scene was the Never Gonna Dance dance, which was very difficult and exhausting. On June 18, 1936, after 47 tries and 15 hours of effort, Rogers' feet began to bleed badly. Blood stained her silk shoes and left spots on the shiny floor. The crew asked her to stop, but she wouldn't. She later said, "I didn't work all this time for a little blood to ruin everything. I wanted to finish the task." She changed her shoes between scenes and kept dancing, completing the scene at 4 a.m. This story was kept a secret for years because the company didn't want anyone to find out. Later, Rogers said it was the Depression. Many people were unemployed. "I felt fortunate to have a job. A little blood seemed like a small cost." That moment showed her strength and dedication. Rogers worked just as hard, but she wasn't treated the same as others. She was paid less than Astaire. In Flying Down to Rio, he made $1,500 a week, while she earned $750. In 1936, he got $211,666 for Swing Time, while she made $124,770. That's nearly $87,000 less, even though she danced while wearing heels and facing backwards. Later, people said that Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but backward and in high heels. This unfairness wasn't only about money. Astaire received more attention in reviews and advertising, while Rogers was often just referred to as Astaire's partner instead of by her own name. She had to stand up for her ideas. During Carefree, she proposed a dance move, but it was overlooked until Astaire made the same suggestion. Then it was approved. When Fred Astaire married Phyllis Potter on July 12, 1933, it led to more issues. Phyllis frequently went to see Fred on set. She would sit quietly and knit while watching him and Ginger. Ginger said this caused stress. Fred became quieter around her, and their conversations seemed stiff. Phyllis also managed some of Fred's tasks. She read his writings and took out any scenes with kissing or excessive physical closeness. That's why Fred and Ginger only kissed once in all 10 of their movies. Ginger Rogers found it difficult to maintain her marriages because of her busy work schedule. Her second marriage to Lou Ayres from 1934 to 1940 happened during the peak of her partnership with Fred Astaire. The long hours and physical effort her work needed left her little time or energy for her personal life. Rogers was married and divorced 5 times during her life. Many people think that the stress from her job contributed to her relationships ending. By 1939, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers had teamed up in 9 films, making some of the most well-known musicals in Hollywood. But their partnership was beginning to weaken. Astaire, always seeking new tasks, felt trapped in the same kind of movies. He had already attempted to work alone on a project called Damsel in Distress in 1937, but it did not succeed. Rogers wanted to take on serious acting parts to show she could do more than just dance. These increasing differences started to appear in their work. Things got worse when their popularity at the box office began to drop. This slide starts with the movie Shall We Dance, which was released in 1937. It made $2.2 million worldwide and was RKO's top film that year, but it still didn't meet the studio's standards. This was the first indication that their relationship was struggling. Next was A Damsel in Distress, Astaire's first film without Rogers. The film was the first Astaire project to make a loss. The audience was tough. A theater owner mentioned that the movie is too long for its storyline. A lower-level staircase, helped by Burns and Allen, has a poor story and secondary dancing. Another person said that this place has always liked Astaire, but people didn't show up for the lady event, and those who did attend weren't very excited. The biggest blow came on May 3, 1938. The Independent Theater Owners Association released an ad saying that some stars are bad for ticket sales. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were included on that list. This public embarrassment surprised Hollywood. Astaire later said that the event troubled him, of course. In fact, it burned me up. RKO was very angry about the name and thought about asking for a public apology. They chose to let the problem go away on its own. Even their meeting in Carefree in 1938 didn't make things better. It was their most costly movie, costing $1.3 million, but it did not make a profit. Their last movie together at RKO, about Vernon and Irene Castle, was made in 1939 and had a very different style. It was a movie about ballroom dancers and was much more serious than the normal fun musicals. This is the only movie where Astaire's character dies. The project faced some issues as well. Irene Castle, who helped with the film, frequently argued with the filmmakers about the outfits and how accurately the history was portrayed. One thing that bothered her was that a white actor, Walter Brennan, was chosen for the role as the castle's faithful black helper. She was shocked and thought the choice was wrong. When the story of Vernon and Irene Castle was released, critics liked its serious tone and emotional richness. However, it didn't earn enough money to pay for its expensive production costs. This failure, combined with their previous disappointments and being labeled as box office poison, ended their well-known relationship. It also marked the end of RKO's golden era of shows. For Astaire and Rogers, this marked the end of an important part of their lives. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers stopped working together, but went on to have their own successful careers, showcasing different talents. Fred danced with new partners, allowing him to try different styles and keep surprising his crowds. His first major film without Ginger was Broadway Melody of 1940, starring Eleanor Powell. Their version of Begin the Begin is still one of the greatest tap dances ever recorded. Later, Fred danced with Rita Hayworth in the movies You'll Never Get Rich in 1941 and You Were Never Lovelier in 1942. Rita added her energetic spirit, which made Fred's dances feel new and exciting. In 1946, he came back from retirement to take Gene Kelly's place in Easter Parade after Kelly injured his ankle. The movie with Judy Garland turned out to be very successful. Another important moment was Fred's collaboration with Sid Charisse in The Bandwagon in 1953 and Silk Stockings in 1957. Their dance routine, Dancing in the Dark in The Bandwagon, became a lasting classic. It combined Fred's beauty with Sid's graceful style. These works allow Fred to explore new ideas while keeping his charm. Fred quit for a short time in 1946, but came back in 1948 for Easter Parade. Gene Kelly, who was meant to star, suggested that Fred take his role instead, and this became a great opportunity for Fred's career. The movie earned more than $6 million, and people loved him once more. In 1949, he got back together with Ginger Rogers for the Barclays of Broadway after Judy Garland left the project. This was their 10th and last movie together. Fred also challenged himself to try different dances, like his well-known ceiling act in the 1951 royal wedding. Not every movie was successful. The Belle of New York, 1952. Fred may not have performed well, but he continued to show that he was one of the most unique stars in Hollywood. His ability to change and continue dancing kept him important for many years. Ginger Rogers wanted to stop doing musicals and show that she could act in important parts. Her greatest success was in the movie Kitty Foyle in 1940, where she played a working-class woman facing love and difficult life choices. The movie covered bold topics for its time, and Ginger got an Oscar for Best Actress for her performance. It also started a fashion trend with the Kitty Foyle dress, which was a dark dress with a white collar that became very famous. The movie earned more than $2.3 million, while only costing $738,000 to make, showing that Ginger was a successful star. After winning an Oscar, Ginger concentrated on taking on more serious parts to showcase her acting skills. In the 1944 movie I'll Be Seeing You, she played a woman who leaves jail for a short time and falls in love with a soldier who is struggling with his past. The part allowed her to express strong feelings. Later, Ginger went to the stage where she achieved success too. In 1965, she appeared in Hello, Dolly, on Broadway. You worked in the position for 14 months and received excellent feedback. She acted in London's West End and was in movies and TV shows during the 1950s and 1960s. Her most recent big film part was in Harlow in 1965, where she acted as Jean Harlow's mother. Fred Astaire and Judy Garland had just been in a hit movie, Easter Parade, in 1948, and began a new film called You Made Me Love You, which was later changed to the Barclays of Broadway. It was made for Astaire and Garland, and practices began in June. But things quickly went wrong. Garland was unwell. She was 26 and dealing with health troubles and medication challenges. After 3 weeks of practice, MGM chose on July 18th to stop Garland from working and take her out of the movie. This meant the film didn't have its female lead. MGM needed help quickly, and they recalled a letter. Ginger Rogers sent her congratulations to director Arthur Freed after the release of Easter Parade. That small action inspired MGM. They contacted Rogers at her ranch in Oregon. Benny Tao, an MGM official, asked her if she would mind making another movie with Fred Astaire. Rogers was taken aback and replied, "What kind of question is that? I would love to make another film with Fred." Just like that, she agreed. Rogers hadn't danced in a movie for 10 years. She joined the show on August 8th and began rehearsing immediately. The story had to be rewritten because it was originally for Garland. The story is about a married couple in the entertainment industry whose relationship faces challenges. When the wife wants to take on dramatic parts, this story reflected the real lives of Rogers and Astaire. They had both changed and matured since their earlier films, making this movie feel special to them. At first, people were concerned, do they still have the magic they used to have? But those fears went away as soon as they began to dance. They started again from the same point they were before. Charles Walters, the director, was happy to work with Garland, but quickly saw that Rogers was the best choice for the part. He said she brought a sense of elegance and maturity that matched her gaze. Rogers practiced for many hours to get back in shape. A sweet moment happened when they danced to They Can't Take That Away From Me. They had sung the song before in the 1937 movie Shall We Dance, but this time they danced to it. The crew quietly watched, impressed by their connection. Even after all those years, they still felt special together. It wasn't easy to film. On September 12th, Rogers fell down from being very tired. She was dehydrated, so shooting had to pause for 2 days. She looked at her to make sure she was okay before moving on. This showed how much they valued and cared for one another. When the Barclays of Broadway opened on May 4th, 1949, fans were excited to see them together once more. The film earned $3,674,000 in the US and Canada and $1,516,000 in other countries. MGM made a profit of $740,000. Critics also enjoyed it. The old magic is still present, though it may be slightly worn, but it's still enchanting. Some people felt the story was old-fashioned, and the dance scenes were not as exciting as those in past films. There was some criticism, too. Judy Garland's fans were unhappy and banned the film because they believed that Rogers had replaced her, even though Garland had left due to health issues. This movie ended up being their last one together. By 1949, they were pursuing different paths in their lives. Rogers won an Oscar for her work in Kitty Foyle and wanted to concentrate on serious acting parts. She didn't want to be stuck performing in shows again. Astaire continued to make shows, but began collaborating with different partners. Age was also a role. Rogers was 37 years old, and Astaire was 50 years old. Their elegant dance style was becoming less popular. Hollywood shows were changing, with younger stars like Gene Kelly adding more energy. Efforts were made to bring them back together. In 1953, a director wanted them to be in a movie called The Gay Divorce. Both were interested, but the idea didn't work out. In 1975, there were plans for a TV special, but Rogers turned it down due to health problems. They talked about each other kindly. In her book, Rogers said, "I enjoyed working with Fred, but everything has its time. Our last film together was a lovely farewell." Astaire said that Ginger was one of the best stars he ever worked with. "Our time together has ended, but the memories remain."